Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Hi, welcome to the Sacred Window Studies podcast. I'm Roshni Kavate, the student advisor, and I'm so excited to speak to our student, Vera. Vera, welcome to the show. So great to have you.
Thank you so much, Roshni. I'm so excited to be here today.
We're recording this very, very early for me, but yeah, it's so exciting we made this work. Tell us where you live and what you do and something about yourself that none of us know.
Sure. So I live in Townsville, which is a city up in North Queensland in Australia. So I live in what's considered the dry tropics. But it is quite wet right now, and we are in the middle of rain season. It is morning for you, but 3 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So I'm super excited that we were able to connect this afternoon. Sorry, what was...
A little bit about yourself, how, you practice as a birth worker.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I am originally from Sweden. I came to Australia about 10 years ago. And after a few years of traveling around here, I met my now partner. And we have one little boy together. And we also raise another little boy together from a previous relationship of my partner, who I also very much consider my son. I am a doula. I run a business called Mother Birth and Postpartum, which was something that was born alongside my son, my youngest son, Torsten. Being introduced to the world of pregnancy and birth and postpartum, and then family life after that, in a different country, without the wise women in my life present, was certainly a difficult experience for me. So that is what led me into my now absolute passion of looking after new mothers, no matter if it's their first or their 10th baby. And so, yeah, that's why I'm here today.
I'm very excited to talk about two topics that you're so deeply passionate about. And then when you wrote your blog posts and shared more about these themes in your work, I was just so excited because I've never come across, such depth, and the way you speak about it feels, it's so personal, but also I think these are some topics that we don't always think about, like how important they are. So I want to start with placenta, the work you do with placenta burial, honoring the placenta. Can you talk about like why this is so important to you, like how you got into this practice, and then share more about what is placenta burial and the importance of it. But I'm curious, yeah, like how did you start in this work?
Sure. I guess it comes from my own birth. I knew that I wanted my placenta encapsulated since before I was pregnant. And it was something that just felt intuitively important to me. And there was really no, scientific reasoning behind that. There was just something that I connected with. And so that's how I got led into then I guess the world of placentas and how overlooked that part of birth can be. Just the fact that it is something that, you know, is often referred to as the afterbirth, but in fact, it is something that is connected to your baby, something that you have made, just like you've made your baby, and something that's nourished your baby through that whole pregnancy. And so I feel that that deserves to be honored, just like we honor our babies. The placenta is just something, I think, you know, after I had my own placenta encapsulated, I was also given a print of my placenta. So that is just the placenta put on top of paper, and that leaves an imprint of the placenta. I was given that, and I cherish and still do cherish that print very much to this day. And I watch my son grow up, and he's incredible in everything that he does, of course. But the placenta stays the same. The placenta is, to me, like a representation or a symbol of my experience from maiden to mother, through pregnancy, through birth, and just showing just that part of the experience. While my son is, you know, growing every day and always changing, my print is always the same and reminds me of, you know, how we all started, where we all came from. So when it comes to my work with placentas, I do, of course, encapsulation if that's something that aligns with mom, but also I will do prints and add watercolors and pressed flowers. And I like to pick the flowers and the leaves around the same time that baby is born, and then press them so that they are also kind of frozen in time of that time when you had your baby. And then I also do placenta burials as well, and I will create keepsakes with the umbilical cord. But when it comes down to, you know, the importance of it, I think that a lot of the time we can overlook this part of birth. And I know for a fact that a lot of the time in births in hospitals, the placenta is just whisked away and perhaps never even shown to the mother. And this, you know, new mother is, of course, with her baby, and so in that moment of meeting the new love of your life, you're not necessarily thinking about your placenta, but it might be something that comes up later when you realize that you were actually never even shown your placenta, or you were never asked what you wanted to do with your placenta, because your placenta belongs to you, not to the care providers wherever you are giving birth. So I think at the very least, we should always be asked what we would like to do. So I love to bring attention to this, especially to brand new parents that are about to have their first baby, to be aware and make a plan for what you would like to do with your placenta. And I'm definitely not trying to tell anyone that a placenta burial is important. A placenta burial is only important if it is important to you. I don't think that it is something that will align with everyone, just like encapsulation or even having a keepsake might not be something that interests all mothers, and it definitely doesn't need to. This is just to bring attention to the fact that you will give birth to not only yourself as a mother and your baby, but you will also give birth to a placenta that you've also grown and made, and that has nourished your baby for 9 months. And so if you want to keep your placenta and whatever you might want to do with your placenta, it is just something to consider and make a decision about.
I think giving that option and honoring the placenta in the way, the new parent wants to, that's such a beautiful practice, right? Because we're giving them agency and a way to recognize all parts of this experience. I wanted to talk a little bit about like the impact you've seen when, people see their placenta prints or they are, either encapsulating or participating in the burial. Like what do how does that impact a new parent, like working with the placenta in any which way? Because I think some people may be curious. Well, of course, like it's in the hospital a lot of the times it's just, it's considered like tissue and like just thrown away really. And then you have to advocate like you're saying. So yeah, maybe this is a two-part question. So let us know the impact and also how do you engage with the medical team? Like how do you even care for it? Because you don't want to just get it in a bag, right? Like how do you get it right in time? Because the what I saw with the prints that you showed some examples, they're so, it looks like it's like another baby or like a mini brain almost, right? You can see all the like blood vessels. So also like kind of handling the placenta in a way that's, affirming of life because it is life in a way. That's what sustains the baby. It's not the baby that's sustaining itself. So it is such a miraculous, magical organ that we're just like, okay, it's waste. We'll just throw it away. But rather, yeah, like honor it as like the life sustaining organ part of the body that is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
I couldn't agree more. Well, some of the impacts, I guess, I'll start there. So I have certainly seen, and I would especially say this when there has been an emergency cesarean, that the placenta has been whisked away, and mom has not only been meeting her brand new baby in a circumstance that she wasn't expecting, but she might also be, given different sedatives or drugs, and she will not be thinking about where her placenta is going. But once the placenta is gone, there is no getting it back. And I have certainly seen mothers struggle with that loss of not getting to see or take part of a part that actually nourished your baby and and actually was important to you. So I guess when it comes to that, I would say, a birth plan is something that I love to talk about all the time. And I know that people love to say you can't plan for a birth, but I would like to say that if you are, if you know that you want to have your placenta and keep it, or at least see it, put that in a document, even if it's not a birth plan, something that you give to the care providers wherever you are, so that they're aware. And when it comes to here in Australia, we don't necessarily have to, advocate to get our placenta, at least not in situations that I've seen yet. Doctors at the hospital have been very respectful and understanding, but if they're not aware, the placenta will be disposed of. So putting that into a document, like no matter whether this is a vaginal birth or a cesarean, an instrumental birth, I am keeping my placenta. The placenta is to be kept in. If you are coming into the hospital or the birth center and you want to keep your placenta, maybe bring a container that you know is clean and sterilized for them to put in. Here in Australia, we are given a container that they will put the placenta in, which is sealed. Usually the placenta is put in a bag and then into this white container and then sealed. So that is something that you could do if you're worried about how your request is going to be received. But when it comes to receiving your placenta keepsakes, I know that mothers usually, really light up when I get to go and drop them off. And I so much love to do that. And I usually refer to them, you said like a brain, and that's so true. It could definitely be seen as a brain, which is amazing. Like the wisdom of your body, they're represented as a brain. I usually think of it as a tree of life. So, kind of putting it onto the paper as if it was a tree. So with the umbilical cord going straight down and maybe taking a shape, or like a little eternity symbol or a love heart, or just simply straight down, and then the big beautiful placenta with all the veins branching out, kind of like branches. I feel like I did probably not answer all of the questions in that question there.
You did. You've been very thorough.
Good.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the description of how it is the tree of life, and now I can really see it. Yeah, because it is very foresty, like your prints.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
like flowers and leaves. So yeah, that is really stunning. I would love to. Do you ever teach like printmaking with placenta? I think that's such a beautiful technique to maybe participate in or just learn. I am just so curious because it is so I feel like I'm like going down this rabbit hole of like, well, what is the technique? How do you do it? Like I'm an artist, but so it
I mean,
so the idea of like printmaking with placenta, wow, like that's next level.
there are so many different ways that you can do it. And usually, like, what I do is I will just put the placenta onto paper or put paper onto the placenta, make sure that it's watercolor paper so it will stay straight after it's dried. And then I will usually add watercolors onto that print. But if mum is not planning on consuming her placenta and she doesn't care if I put paint straight onto the placenta, you can also put paint onto the placenta and then pushing that onto a paper, which will then create, if you use a fair bit of paint, almost like a 3D effect of your placenta where you can feel the veins of your placenta. I also want to say that if this is something, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I would really love to do this with my placenta when I have a baby or my next baby, then just make sure that you get someone to help you do this before you're freezing your placenta. If you're considering to freeze your placenta, do this before that, because it'll create a much more defined print than after the placenta has been frozen. I also want to say that this is, I haven't run any classes or anything. I would be super keen on doing that, but I know placentas are sometimes a bit confronting to especially to new parents. But when it comes to, you know, birth not going the way that you necessarily planned, I think that the burial ceremony, whenever you decide to do that, whether that is shortly after your birth or maybe after months or sometimes years in the freezer, burying your placenta can be such a healing and closing ceremony for an event that might have been traumatic. And even if it wasn't, it is still a beautiful closing ceremony where you have your baby in your arms or running around, where you can, you know, kind of come back to Mother Nature and give back to the earth. And also, if your birth did not go the way that you had planned, this is a time where you can take and reclaim your birth experience and give your placenta back to nature, or you know, whatever plan you have for your placenta. You take that power back and you complete your birth experience there with your loved ones around you, or just by yourself.
That's such a beautiful practice to honor the birth, the memory of it, and all your hopes and, you know, intentions for that. So I think any ritual that offers a chance to, yeah, like honor both, you know, celebrating, but the loss aspect too, I think that can be really wonderful, you know, for the body to like recognize the experience you've had.
Absolutely.
You talked about birth and birthing, so I do want to pivot. I think this is such a beautiful transition to talking about hypnobirthing, but your specialty is how you talk about it and practice it in the postpartum period. And I don't think I've heard much about that. So maybe we'll just start with what is hypnobirthing and, you know, um, yeah, how that can be part of your birthing experience, but more specifically, if we can talk about the principles of hypnobirthing for the postpartum experience. Because I think what I've seen is a lot of people do so much prep, right? For giving birth, and then when you come home, you're like, okay, now what? And you're confronted with so much that is really like such a shock, and how can we kind of, you know, navigate the shock of like being home, and like you're saying, a lot of times people don't have that kind of like large family of support, or um you know, like even wisdom, people to like advise you and say, okay, like this is how we can, you know, kind of make sense of the chaos of the first few weeks. This is how we can, you know, calm down our nervous system, maybe. I think so many people are just like, just physically, emotionally in shock. And I think that can be a huge surprise because you're expecting, oh, it's going to be so joyful, but there are so many more emotions than that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess how I got introduced to this, and this is maybe something that people have already talked about. I actually haven't looked into that. Maybe I just think that I thought of this and someone else has already. But I started teaching a hypnobirthing course with a dear colleague of mine called Kelly, who runs the healing home here in Townsville. And she's run a hypnobirthing course for several years, and I was lucky enough to be included into that and hosting them with her. So hypnobirthing is different depending on who is presenting the information, basically. So there is, you know, like the larger organizations that will have, you know, a set the set information on what is presented, and then there are private, hypnobirthing teachers, if you want to call it that. And so all the teaching in all the different hypnobirthing classes that are available worldwide and online as well, this is huge. They're all different. And what Kelly and I present is something that Kelly first created that we've then co-created into what it is today, which is called Sacred Birth Rising. And I tried to kind of summarize for the blog article that I've written what is included in most hypnobirthing classes, no matter kind of where you go or who is presenting to you. And that is usually how we can use breath, visualization, light touch, massage, affirmations, empowering yourself, and the physiology of birth. So we like to present all of these topics, and they will all be presented in different ways, and they will all be giving you different breath practices. But what I thought when we were, co-creating and evolving Sacred Birth Rising is that all of these topics are still very much useful in postpartum. And perhaps even if it's not, the exact same breath practices, for example, or the exact same visualization, the technique itself of using visualization or light touch massage to regulate your nervous system can still be extremely powerful in postpartum. And especially because in hypnobirthing immersions or classes, usually you will attend with your birthing partner. So whether that is your the other parent of the child, or if that is your doula, or whoever you are planning to come with you and support you in birth. But if that person is also going to support you in postpartum, that person can also use these same techniques that we can also help with in class, and present how you can support your partner, not only through birth by maybe light touch massage, for example, but also in postpartum, and how, we can, these skills don't have to just be for this one particular event, but this can be something that you use in postpartum and you can actually use for the rest of your lives together. And how great is that? This doesn't have to be just something that you spend so much money on a class that prepares you for this one moment in time, but this is actually something that you can incorporate for the rest of your life. And I think about this with my studies with Sacred Window Studies as well. How we learn all of these practices and techniques and all this wisdom and knowledge that we not only can bring to new mothers in the community around us, but we can also incorporate into our own lives and use for the rest of our lives, because the knowledge is adaptable. So anyway, with breath, for example, usually in birth we'll talk about the breathing baby down, and that's not necessarily something that is applicable to postpartum, but something that we do talk about is, if you are in labor and you are finding another breathing technique that just shows up for you. You don't know the name of this technique. You don't have to know the name of that technique. That is your technique. If it is working for you, go with that. If that doesn't come to you, here are some techniques that you can rely on. And for example, in postpartum, I love pranayama, and something that I really enjoy and find grounding is ujjayi breath. And that's something that I would then perhaps say that this is something you could bring with you into postpartum. When it comes to visualization, same thing again there. So we will visualize, our body opening for birth, or maybe a flower with opening up petal by petal, letting it take its time, and knowing that you would harm the flower if you tried to hurry the flower up by bending the petals. And this, not necessarily exactly that technique, but something similar you can still use in postpartum, and you can still use visualization. For example, if you are breastfeeding your baby, visualizing, the milk flowing from your breast and feeling that and into your baby, and how it nourishes your baby, and how you can visualize that in your head. So perhaps like a tree with roots through your breast, with the trunk of the tree being your nipple, and where your baby is latching, and then the leaves and branches being your baby, and how, leaf by leaf is opening up, and visualizing how you are nourishing your baby. Light touch massage we can also bring into postpartum, and sometimes light touch or any touch is the last thing we want, and I want to fully acknowledge that as well. Being touched out is certainly something that we have to consider, and something that we can also talk about in class or in our immersions. But we usually talk about a grounding touch point in hypnobirthing. So that might be something, a spot on your body, the birthing parent's body, that you decide is a grounding touch point for you guys. So that is something that the couple will decide on, and that's not up to anyone else but them, what works for them. But maybe it is a hand on the shoulder. And we can, for example, if that is the one, bring that into postpartum. If that is a grounding touch point that you've used throughout pregnancy and then through birth, if that's something that is working for you as you two together, then that is definitely something that you can still use and can nourish your connection with each other in postpartum. Affirmations as well. So in hypnobirthing, we love to talk about how the support person can support the birthing person. And that can be, so many different ways. But something that works for a lot of mothers is affirmations, or words of, affirming mom that she is doing an amazing job. And sometimes when we talk about these affirmations in class, it might sound a bit put on, or not, a bit cheesy. But when you are in the moment, these things are going to sound very real, because you are going to mean them. So we, for example, in the hypnobirthing immersion that I've run with Kelly, we will make affirmation cards together, and we will make affirmation cards for each other. So both the birthing person making them for the support person, and the other way around. So this is something that you can easily do for postpartum as well. And maybe the affirmation is not, that is used in birth is not necessarily the same one that you'd bring over to postpartum, but a lot of them can be. For example, I trust my intuition. I trust your intuition. I trust your guidance through this, through this time. And this is, something that we can definitely use in a time where it can be hard to connect with our partners if we're in a romantic relationship with the support person. It can be hard to find that time together when you're finding your feet as a new family, whether that is your first baby or your fifth. It'll change the dynamic of your family. But going back to these affirmations and using these skills is, still something that's so helpful and can help you guys to connect. We also talk about empowering yourself, and in hypnobirthing, that is, we are not empowering you, but you are going to empower yourself by making decisions that align with you. And this is very much something that starts immediately in postpartum. As soon as your baby is born, you're going to be making decisions for your baby as well. So knowing that you are empowered to make decisions for not only yourself, but for your baby who is unable to make decisions for themselves quite yet, but might communicate to you what they need. You know them best, and knowing that you know them best and you are the expert, I think is very important to bring with you into postpartum. You're not only the expert of your body and your birth, but you are the expert of your baby, and your intuition and what your baby communicates to you is important and it counts. We also talk about the physiology of birth. So there's a quote by Rachel Reed, who is fantastic, where she speaks about the fact that the physiology of birth is hormonal. And this is something that she put it in such perfect words, because, we all often will talk about hormones in birth and the importance of them. And in reality, this is exactly what, the hormones are the most important part of your birth. If you are able to feel good and feel supported and let that oxytocin flow, if we can also make that happen for your postpartum. So that means that you, in our hypnobirthing immersion, what that has meant for us is to inform parents of, how important oxytocin is, not only for birth, but also for postpartum, and how this will help with, if you choose to breastfeed, help with your lactation, for example, and what hormones are important for lactation, and how we can support these hormones in postpartum as well as during birth. So yeah, that is, I guess, not necessarily in short, but that is what I speak about when I talk about using the hypnobirthing skills through into postpartum as well.
I'm glad you took your time, because it is so important and such a great resource. And I think it's also important to highlight that, during birth and postpartum, parents are sold so many devices, gadgets, things to buy, but this is such a great investment in yourself. Is just learning how to tap into your own body, how to breathe in a way that you can, make decisions outside of this stressful mode, that you can nourish your brain and your body. So you are operating from a sense of a deeper grounded space, right? So I think the more we can kind of, when we talk about, minimalism, I think this is such a great skill to have, is you don't have to reach for, different kinds of monitors or things and things that clutter up that you're kind of thinking outside of your own body. But imagine if you could
Absolutely.
just feel like, okay, I can breathe from this technique or try that technique. You cycle through different techniques and you know what your body's needing, like having that intuition, especially anxiety being such a big part of postpartum experience. Um, I would think that, this framework would be so helpful to support someone through the rest of their life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think, yes, devices can certainly clutter not only our physical space, but our mental space and disconnect us from our intuition. Um, and that goes also for, our entire lives, not just the baby things, but, just things in general, trying to keep things in your space, knowing that your space is sacred, and you having the space to connect to yourself and your intuition is so important. And so be able to connect with your baby now as well, in postpartum, without all that clutter, mental and physical. Absolutely. It's gold.
Well, Vera, any last words? I know we have to wrap up soon, but I could just keep listening to you. I feel like the way you describe things, it's so simple, but also so profound. Yeah, any last words of wisdom or things you had known, before you became a parent and started your business? Because that's what's so great about having talking to you is so much of like what you practice as a professional is really because you encountered it in a very deeply personal way. So I think it means a lot, like the where you come from. You've like really integrated that, as a personal journey, and now you're offering it as a solution for new parents from that space. Yeah. So any last words before we wrap up?
Well, I guess, thank you anyone for listening. I absolutely do operate from a very personal space, and this was work that came to me, and I did not come to it. I didn't fill out any job applications for this. I I was doing this work before I ever registered a business. Um, and it was something that I felt I needed to do. It was like my whole body was steered into this direction, and I knew I needed to, as cheesy as it sounds, try to change the world by starting from the very beginning. And every single mom that I meet teaches me something new, if not several things. I would say almost always several things. But if I can say anything to you who are listening, if you are feeling called to walk towards this path, do it. It has been absolutely life-changing for me, and it's been life-changing for my family as well. And the knowledge that I've been able to access through both the mothers in my community, but also through Sacred Window Studies, has been amazing and life-changing, and helped me change the way that I live my life and the way that I raise my children. And helped me raise my children in a more grounded and connected way. So if there's anything I would say is that if you are feeling called, go for it. You can do it.
Great. Thank you so much. And Vera will include links about where people can find you, but are there specific ways that, especially you work with people online, if they don't live near you in Australia?
Sure. So if someone wanted to be a part of the hypnobirthing immersion, we could absolutely set that up online as well. And yeah, you could find me on my website, which is verathedoula.com, which is pretty easy. And yeah, otherwise Instagram or Facebook, I'm on there, both of them are under Mother Birth and Postpartum. And yeah, I would love to connect. If anyone has any questions or anything, I would love to talk to you.
Well, Vera, it's been such a pleasure, and thank you for sharing everything you've learned. I think this will be so helpful for people to just kind of stop and reflect and think about. There's so many aspects to birthing and postpartum, but yeah, this adds so much richness to that conversation. So thank you again for all the work you do, and I hope people will enjoy all your writing and the images you've created. They're so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much, Roshni, and thank you for your time today. It's been lovely to chat.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.